There's no possible way that I want a runner riveted with a piece of glass running on the side of my car. She said, there's no possible way. And we kind of got heated because, well, what else are we going to do?
What if the coolest person you've ever seen building cars was hiding something the whole time? What if all those crazy builds, ideas, and garbage-found parts were just the surface of a much bigger story?
Not being happy with where my life is going, I decided to change it, and I took it and put it in my own hands because I knew the dream I had no one's ever seen before.
Bad Chad Hiltz is finally telling the truth at age 53. But it's not what you thought it would be. It's not just about cars. Listen up. You need to hear this. Chad's life was never about cars alone. Bad Chad Hiltz is no longer playing at age 53. He's telling. He's finally proving what a lot of fans have been thinking for years. That the custom cars, crazy designs, and works of art made from junk were never just builds. They saved my life. Chad didn't build to show off to everyone. Building was the only thing he knew how to do to stay alive. Every bent frame, welded panel, and strange detail was never meant to stand out. They were all done to keep people from going crazy. People saw talent in his work, but he saw pain. He saw treatment when they looked at art. Chad now knows that what other people called imagination was really a way for him to deal with his sadness. He didn't pick cars because he liked them. They didn't ask any questions, so he picked them. No one judged them. They didn't go away. Like him, they were just waiting for someone to give them a reason to live again. Chad grew up in a place where things were hard. No big stores, no metal spoons, and no cool tools or teachers. It's just Kingsport, a small, cold town where things are really cold. He had to figure things out with what he had from the start, which was usually nothing. He had no hopes of getting awards. Because that seemed to be all life had to offer, he dreamed of turning trash into something helpful. He wasn't a genius with a lot of contacts. He was a kid whose feet were full of broken tools and dirt under his nails. While other kids played hockey or hung out with their friends, Chad was in the backyard taking engines apart and drawing parts on napkins. He was thinking about what it would be like to make something that no one else could. He didn't have training. He had instinct. He had grit that made up for what he lacked in money or style. He had a strange talent that let him see a work of art in a pile of rust, even when he was a youth. We now know that wasn't trust. It was a desperate act, not because he wanted recognition, but because he didn't want to feel like no one could see him. He needed those builds to work. The cars were his way out, his quiet protest against the hand that life had given him. And over time, that defiance turned into metal, flame, and originality that didn't fear being different. It wasn't about making money. It was about not giving up. His builds weren't awards. They showed. He was poor, uneducated, and unnoticed. But this showed that someone like him could still make something remarkable. Chad never asked for praise. He was looking for a reason. It becomes clearer that those cars were never just for the world. The more you look into his life, they were for the kid inside him who still needed to believe he was important. He's finally saying it out loud at age 53. The dream wasn't the cars. They were the cure. People around the world watched the sparks and steel, but they missed the most important thing: why he started. Everything starts to make sense now that he says it himself. The chaos. What a love. How intense it is. Performance wasn't it. One bolt at a time, it turned pain into beauty. That's not the end of the truth, though. If you thought making the cars was hard, just wait until you see what Chad had to do to stay alive when the cameras were off. It was one thing to get hurt while making art, but what about the pain behind the scenes? That's where the real scars are. The real struggle. People thought he was smart because he could make a car out of trash, but no one asked him how much it cost him to live that way. There was a man who never felt like he was good enough behind the sparks and the cool cuts. Every time the shop lights went out, the man had doubts about himself. Everyone saw bad Chad, the builder. But Chad Hiltz, the guy, he had heavy things on him that the camera couldn't catch. He didn't say anything about it for years. It wasn't just a bad start. It was always going uphill. Chad didn't have any backers or other plans. He didn't have any rich people in his life, not even rich friends. He only had scraps, bills, and a dream that seemed bigger than his life. People cheered for the builds, but they didn't see the extra jobs he did to keep the lights on. They didn't know about the times he skipped meals to buy parts, or the days he spent looking for money just to make sure he wouldn't lose everything. But what was the hardest? It wasn't the job. In the middle of all that chaos, it was being a dad. Chad had a son named Colton, and he wanted to be the kind of dad who showed up, took care of his kids, and gave more than he got as a child. But it's not honorable to follow your dream when you're poor and scared. It's very scary. Chad had to decide what to do: rest or build, work or be a parent, do your best or give up. And every time he decided to keep going, he felt bad about it, because he always felt like he was failing his son, no matter how hard he worked. He is now being honest when he talks about it, not with pleasure. He felt like giving up sometimes, everything, not just the shop. And there were times when the voice in his head was louder than metal grinding. He was told he would never make it, that he was losing his life, and that he wasn't good enough as a man, a builder, or a dad. He didn't keep going because he wasn't scared. He just didn't know how to stop. That's something most people never got. They thought he was tough since he didn't follow the rules and wore sunglasses. Toughness doesn't look like a leather jacket, though. You have to drag yourself out of bed when you're tired, broke, and empty, and do it anyway. That wasn't having faith. It was a stay-alive mode. It was toughness that was built up in silence. For every person who said nice things about how creative he was, there were 100 who didn't believe him, including him. He had no map with him. He hadn't been trained. He was building based on hunger and pain. Every win felt like it was on a thin line, and every mistake felt like it could be the last one. He kept going, though, which is what makes his story unique. Not the cars, not the fame, but the way he looked fear in the face and chose to push through it is what makes most people give up. The Jolene factor. A lot of people thought she was just the quiet girl next to the torchbearer. Fans hailed Bad Chad's brilliance while she stood in the background and sparks flew. But what they didn't know, what no one really saw, was that she was holding everything up. It wasn't just the partner for Jolene McIntyre. She was what made the storm happen. Without her, none of it would have lived on. There is no doubt in Chad's mind now. Every deal, every build, and every episode of the show happened because Jolene made them happen. She kept everything else from falling apart, while he poured himself into metal and madness. She loved more than just Chad. She took care of him. She was in charge of the company, the cash, the stress, dates, and times. Even when the engine tried to stop, she kept the wheels turning. And there were many times when it almost did. When things were at their worst, when Chad's burnout stopped him from being creative, and when the stress of TV schedules and real-life bills became too much, Jolene stepped in. She did not make a big speech or do something dramatic. She just kept things calm. The crazy thoughts in Chad's head were organized by her. She organized the chaos. Her calm hand behind the scenes could have caused everything to fall apart years ago. She wasn't just there to help. She was a surgeon. Not only did Jolene cheer from the bleachers, but she was right in the middle of everything. She made calls, negotiated, planned, made budgets, managed the crew, and managed Chad. She did all of this with a quiet strength that most people don't give her credit for. She never needed attention. She was too busy when the cameras were not on, making sure the shop did not fall apart. Jolene made support appear out of thin air, while Chad made cars out of scraps. The company, the identity, and the history were all made by two people, not just one. Fans thought she was just going along for the ride, but she was actually driving half the time. Chad could only see the big picture, but she understood the business. She knew the stress was going to happen before it did. She dealt with breakdowns of all kinds, emotional, mechanical, and financial, in a way that most people didn't even notice. Because she didn't want anyone to notice her, she did everything. In this story, that's what makes her so strong. She didn't want to be famous. She was doing her best to keep Chad together. She became something much more important than a co-star because of that. As the base, she became the screen, the calm before his storm. Jolene put out Chad's very hot fire so that it wouldn't destroy the building. They not only ran a business together, they made it through one. They did more than just make unique cars. They made a machine out of nothing and kept it going without a manual. From far away, what looked like love was really just a pure relationship. The world called Chad a genius, but it was Jolene who kept the genius from falling. She didn't stand in front of the camera very often, but her prints are all over everything. Every car that's done. Each season of the show. Chad didn't give up at all. The truth is that there was someone keeping the fuel in the garage for every lit torch. You thought it was hard to keep a relationship and a business going? Just wait until you see what happened when the cameras came out and the network took over. Because TV almost broke them up instead of making their lives better. The industry truth. From the outside, fame looks nice. It shines. It makes you blind. People around the world think that someone made it. But when the cameras came out, Chad Hiltz lost something else. His peace, his pace, and his reason for living. The parts of him that were most important were almost erased by the show that made him famous to millions of people. A neighborhood legend became famous all over the world thanks to bad Chad customs. The brand went crazy. New eyes saw the buildings. The fans came from all over the world. But there was a man who was drowning in demands he never asked for behind the flashy cuts and network tags. And Chad is telling the truth about how that really felt for the first time. The people who made it wanted excitement. They wanted trouble. They needed something loud that would sell. But Chad? His only goal was to build. His goal was to weld in silence. He really wanted the grind, not just a show, which doesn't care about time and only cares about getting it right. That didn't matter to TV. They were concerned with due dates, sound bites, and plots. Over time, everything about his work that gave it purpose began to feel fake. The world saw some cool cars and a crazy smart person. What they didn't see was how much stress was building up behind the scenes. The sleep he gave up. The parts he rushed through. He didn't want to cut those corners, but he had to because the cameras needed an end. Some nights he worked until dawn and then started shooting right away. He wasn't honored at the end of the day. He was just worn out, not full. It wasn't because the work was hard, but because he no longer had to do it. Fans have always known what he was thinking. The show took parts of him. His story, his life, and his heart were boiled down to fit into a 42-minute show. But in a structure made for ratings, there's no room for real feels. Chad can't breathe because there is no air. The breakdown, the burnout, and the time when passion turned into pressure all began at that point. Now he says it straight out. Fame made a mask. People thought he would always be the energetic builder, to be fun, inspiring, and impossible to touch. He wasn't a machine, though. He was just a regular guy who tried to make junk into something useful. Now he felt like the trash, used up, picked apart, and not understood. He had times when he questioned everything. Why did he agree to it? Why did he let random people cut his story? Why did he think he could make it in a world that kills artists and sells their souls for money and clips and junk? Everyone else thought it was his big break, but he now knows it was just the beginning of something he almost couldn't get back from. The worst part? It wasn't the agreements, it wasn't the changes. It was the feeling that he was no longer himself. People didn't see the boy from Kingsport who built cars to get away from pain when they saw him. They watched it on TV. The version that has been filtered, blown up, and left out. A little more of the real Chad went away every time he smiled for a scene that didn't feel right. He no longer blames anyone. Not really. It seems like he got what he was after, but he didn't know how much it would cost. That fame would tie you down. That people would not only watch, but also expect. Even though millions of people saw them, it could still feel like you were by yourself. He's still here, though, still putting up. He is still trying to get back to the reason he started. There's still that kid in the cold garage looking for the spark that made him feel alive, even after all the changes and events. He's no longer chasing cameras now that he's 53. He wants to find peace. But there's one more thing he needs to say to himself before he can move on. Not to the fans or the directors. Because the truth about every scar, every build, and every fight is finally coming out. And this time, it's not about making a return. It's about ending things. His final word at 53. Chad Hiltz is 53 years old and isn't trying to be anyone's hero. He's not trying to get deals with spotlights or network contracts. He's had enough of acting like success looks different from fame. He wants something more real and quiet these days. After all the stress, changes, and years of turning pain into performance, he's finally taking a step back and asking the most important question. What does this all mean? He can now say what he couldn't before. He didn't want to be famous. He only wanted to be of use. He wanted to make something that would last through the war. Something that proved to everyone, including himself, that you can make something amazing from nothing. It wasn't about praising the cars. They served as reminders. Proof that broken things can be more beautiful than new ones if you treat them with care. Chad doesn't just mean the metal, either. He means himself. He hid behind the bushes for years. He let the chaos of making the world hide the holes inside. He believed that if he worked hard and made the plans loud enough, no one would notice how tired he was. What a mess. How heavy it was to carry a dream when you didn't think you deserved it. We no longer need to hide him. He feels bad that it took him so long to say that out loud. He feels bad about how many times he hid the truth by painting over it. One thing has stayed the same. He never gave up. He could have sped up the process, could have built cars just to get marks. Might have been a better choice as a character than a maker. He didn't, though. He kept building with broken things, scars, and other things that life gave him. He stayed honest through it all, which is something no one else could do. Every bolt, weld, and crazy design was honest, even if no one could understand it, which is what makes it a memory. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful journeys. And click on the next video that pops up now. You won't want to miss what's coming next.